Do it. Into the Finance Committee, Bill Gross is the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll first present the June-July financials. Revenues for June were $4,626,800, which is $1.1 million more than budget for the month. Year-to-date revenues reflect a favorable $2.9 million variance from budget and a favorable $4 million variance from prior year-to-date. Locations with the largest variances from budget were the hotel motel taxes, which were $326,000 better. Hotel revenues continue to remain strong. Hotel taxes reported in June were based on hotel revenues in May. As you may recall from our meeting last month, several of our hotels reported record room revenue in both May and June. Parking was $238,000 better than budget. Traffic counts were 43,848 vehicles, higher than June of 2020. Annual pass sales were 43,000 higher than budget, and daily pass sales were 195,000 higher than budget this month. Business leases were 215,000 better than budget. Percentage rent revenues were higher than budgeted due to the increased revenues at the hotels and businesses on the island during the month of May. Summer waves was also better than budget by $101,000. Revenues exceeded budget expectations for the month. Variance is primarily due to the daily admissions, seasonal passes, cabana rentals, and concession sales, which were all higher than budget for the month. Expenses for June were $2,304,161, which is $346,000 or 13% less than budget for the month. Year-to-date expenses were $3 million less than budget and were $2 million less than prior to year-to-date expenses. Largest expense variances for the month were human resources, which was $438,000 less than budget due to vacant positions, full-time and part-time, $138,000 less, as well as unused retention funds, $300,000, which was budgeted in June for unexpected retirement payouts and possible staffing retention needs. Contracts expense were under budget $122,000. The largest portion of this variance is from the special events, which was $80,000, that was budgeted for consultants to assist with the events during the fiscal year 21. These funds were not spent since we did not have any large events this year. Repair and maintenance were over budget, $112,000. This variance is from timing differences from earlier in the year. Some of the projects that were held back earlier in the year were completed in June. Net operating cash income for June was $2,322,639, which is $1.5 million better than the budget of net operating income of $835,576. Year-to-date net operating cash income is $5.9 billion in budget and $6 million better than prior year-to-date income. June traffic and hotel stats were presented at last board meeting, so I'll not go over those again at this time. Marjorie is going to give a little more detail on the year-end financials in a few minutes, but I'll go ahead and give you an update on the July financials before she gets into that. The July financials, revenues for July were $5,705,136, which is $616,000 more than budget for the month. July is the first month of our fiscal year and is typically the largest revenue month of the year. Revenues for July were $1.4 million higher than July of 2020. Locations with the largest variances from budget were the Convention Center, which is $159,000 better. There were 19 events with a total of 10,130 attendees at the Convention Center in July. These events covered 39 event days and utilized 686,460 square feet of convention space. Parking was $138,000 better than budget. Annual pass sales were $9,000 higher than budget, and daily pass sales were $129,000 higher than budget for this month. Georgia Sea Turtle Center was $157,000 better than budget. Gift shop concession sales and the Sea Turtle admission sales were both higher than anticipated for the month. Summer Waves was $56,000 better. This variance is primarily due to daily admissions and concession sales, which are higher than budget for the month. Expenses. Expenses for July were $2,712,825, which is $424,000 or 14% less than budget for the month. Expenses in July of 2021 were $348,000 more than July of 2020. The largest expense variances for the month were human resource expense, lower by $159,000 due to vacant positions, full-time and part-time. Supplies and materials expense were $60,000 less than budget, and repair maintenance expense were $146,000 less than budget. These funds are timing variances and will be spent by the end of the fiscal year. Net operating cash income for July was $2,992,311, which is $1 million better than the budgeted net income of $1,952,996. Net operating income is $1.1 million better than July of 2020. July traffic stats. Total traffic count for July was 178,798 vehicles, which is 48,121 more vehicles than July of 2020. Year-to-date traffic count is 919,062 vehicles, which is 292,262 vehicles more than the prior calendar year to date. Hotel stats. We don't have a hotel report present this month, but we're still waiting on the information from the Club Hotel. We'll present these once they are received. I'll now call on Marjorie to give some information about the year-end financials and present the capital equipment and project request. Marjorie.
So let me start off by kind of reminding everybody kind of where we were last year when the fiscal year started. We had just come off of a bunch of closures where a lot of our amenities have been closed for over a month. We had people in furlough, a lot of uncertainty going on. We had basically scrapped the entire budget that we had prepared and started over because of all the uncertainty. We had budgeted our expenses and revenues very conservatively. We did plan for some growth over fiscal year 2020, and we just hoped for the best. Jones and I kept a really close eye on the expenses, and all of our departments did a great job staying below their expense budgets for the year. Our expenses for fiscal year 21 were $22.3 million, which is about $3 million less than budget and $2 million less than the prior year. Our expenses for last year were actually the lowest that they have been in the last 5 years. So back to fiscal year 16 levels. So that's pretty amazing considering everything we've had going on. Revenues, on the other hand, far exceeded our expectations for the year. We had budgeted revenues at $27.5 million, but our actual revenues came in at $30.5 million. And that's almost $3 million better than we had planned in the budget and $4 million better than last year. And that's a record for, all-time revenue record there. So that was pretty amazing considering what we had going on also. But that also caused challenges at the same time because during all of that, we were short-staffed. And so to be able to perform that kind of revenue numbers with the shortage in staff and lower expenses, our staff really should be congratulated for being able to pull that off. So the net result of all that is that we ended the year with $8 million available for designated fund contributions, capital expenditures, and cash reserves. That amount was $5.9 million more than we had anticipated at the time we started the budget. From those funds, we were able to set aside $3.5 million in board designated fund contributions. And those contain contributions to the Water Wastewater Fund, the Fire Equipment Fund, Tourism Development Fund, and the Public Area Improvement Funds. During the year, the board also approved $2.6 million in funding for capital equipment and projects, which leaves us with $2.1 million available at the end of the year for capital projects and cash reserves. So the executive staff is requesting $1,018,000 of this balance to be used for additional capital projects, and the balance of $1,074,000 to be contributed to cash reserves. This will be the largest contribution we have ever had to our cash reserves also. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about year-end before moving into the capital request.
Board members, you need to know that whenever Marjorie called me to her office to review all of this, I was in such total disbelief that I kept looking at her saying, "Are you sure you haven't made an error? Are you sure you haven't made an error?" And she said, "I have looked at it so many times because you're right, we've never seen numbers like this." And then my worst nightmare, I came in the next day and I told Marjorie, I said, "I dreamed that you found an error." But there is no error. This is just the unexpected consequence of unbelievable leisure demand last year on this island, whenever expenses were held to a bare minimum. And it's pretty amazing, I think, what has happened.
I agree. So are there any questions about the financials?
Is there a motion to recommend approval of the additional capital request as recommended by Marjorie?
No, if you don't mind, I'd like to run through the list first, just so you know what's on there.
Well, they have the list
They
in
have the
front of them.
list, okay.
They've reviewed it, but for people that are listening in, if she could run through the list, Mr. Chairman, that would be good.
Please.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, if the capital projects are approved, a contribution of $1,074,479 would be made to the JIA cash reserves. After reviewing the capital needs for the authority, the executive staff is requesting funding of $1,018,000 for capital equipment and projects to be paid from the fiscal year 21 operating funds. Those capital requests include $115,000 for a new backhoe, and that would replace one that we lost year before last, I think. It's a critical piece of equipment on the island. Be $600,000 for the construction of a new public works office with restrooms and a break room for the staff. $100,000 to remove the existing carpet flooring in the annex building and replace that with vinyl laminate. $180,000 to replace all of the common area furniture in the Jekyll Island Convention Center. $10,000 to install a fire alarm at the JIA admin building, and $13,000 to replace one of the tank chillers at the Georgia Turtle Center in the hospital. So that will be a total funding request of $1,018,000. In addition, we're asking for approval to use some of the previously designated funds. One of those requests is from the wastewater reserve funds, and that would be $21,000 for the grip pump at the wastewater treatment plant. That one broke down and can't be repaired any longer. And then from the public area improvement funds, we're requesting $29,048 for the paving of the Pier Road parking lot, $92,000 to rejuvenate and restripe the Convention Center and Great Dunes asphalt parking lots, $30,000 for signage at the Corsair Beach Park and the Ocean View Park, and $130,294 to purchase a used garbage truck to replace the current one that's no longer repairable. So that will be a total of $281,000, $342,000 from the public improvement funds. And then lastly, we're requesting $234,000 from the Tourism Development Fund to issue a change order to Landscapes Unlimited to complete the unfinished section of the Causeway Bike Path from the island to the Guest Information Center. Do you have any questions about the capital?
So the total capital request is $1.554,34164, and the contribution to cash reserves would be $1,074,479.26.
Yes, sir.
And before we call for a vote, I'd like to double check who we have on the line. I believe the remaining board members have joined. Ms. Birch Meeks, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Tollison?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Very good. All right, now, is there a motion to recommend the approval of the additional capital request as recommended by Marjorie and staff?
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Marjorie, the Georgia Department of Audit's report of the JIA Financial Review.
Yes, sir. So the board members should have received an email from the Georgia Department of Audits this week, which contained the reports from both our fiscal year 2020 engagements with the audit staff. One of those engagements was for the review of the Jekyll Island Authority financial information. In this engagement, the auditing staff selected 7 procedures to test. These procedures are selected entirely by the audit staff, and they're the same procedures that they use when performing engagements for similar entities of our size and structure. The procedures they utilized contain some of the following tests. They inspected the balance sheet items reported on the trial balance. They chose a number of accounts and which accounts to review. They selected 19 balance sheet accounts and tested for adequate supporting documentation to make sure they were properly reconciled to the general ledger. They inspected the employee compensation records to ensure that the highest paid employees had approved documentation to support their salary amounts. And they tested all salary increases greater than 10% to make sure that there was supporting documentation in the file for those increases. They selected the 15 highest vendor payments to make sure that there were appropriate documentation with those also, and that the vendors were valid vendors. They then inspected the salaries and travel amount that's reported to the Department of Audits each year, and they compared those with our financials to make sure those matched. Then they compared the trial balance submitted to the state accounting office to our general ledger to make sure all those numbers were correct. And they obtained the schedule of expenditures of federal awards that's submitted by the authority and compared that to our accounting records and examined all the expenses related to those to make sure that all of our federal grants were in line with where they should be. So I'm happy to say that there were no findings noted when any of these testing procedures were done. The other engagement was for the review of our businesses and residential leases for calendar years 2019 and 2020. For this engagement, the auditors consulted with the JIA lease and accounting staff to determine the mutually agreed upon procedures to test during this engagement. The businesses are rotated every 2 years, and we rotate them between hotels and other businesses so that they're all tested at least every 2 years. In addition, we take a random selection of the residential properties and select some of those every year for testing also. That's the ones that rent the property out. The businesses this year were the hotels and their subleases, as well as some residential properties. There were 8 procedures selected by the staff and the auditors for this engagement. These procedures include confirming the mathematical accuracy of the reports for the hotel motel tax, the rent payments, and the percentage rent payments submitted to JIA for 2019 to 2020. They also compared the categories of revenues that were listed on the reports sent to us for the hotel motel tax and percentage rent, and compared those to the business's general ledger to make sure that they were reporting what they should. They then recalculated the percentage rent and hotel motel tax to make sure that they were calculated correctly. And if the business was subject to capital reserve requirements, they compared the amounts deposited in the capital reserve account and the expenses from the reserve account to the amounts required by the lease. The auditors did note some minor calculation errors in the reports and found underpayments of approximately $13,000 that were due to the authority. They also noted that several of the hotels did not meet the capital reserve requirements of their lease. The hotels, businesses, and residential properties will be notified of any discrepancies found and any amounts due to or from the JIA.
How are they notified?
We will send them a letter, and if they owe an amount, it'll contain the invoice, or if we owe them, it will contain a check.
Thank you.
Jones, do you have anything?
And then I should note, or you should note, Marjorie, that, that Maria Humphrey will be following up with those as well, our lease manager.
Yes.
Any questions, Marjorie? Marjorie, thank you. You and your team have done a great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the finance report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Crows. Open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Floor is open. And I'm going to move on to the Human Resources Committee. Dr. Buster Evans, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we're going to call on our Director of Human Resources, Jenna Johnson, to come forward and provide us with the fiscal year 2021 staffing update, as well as an update on the Boys and Girls Clubs intern partnership. But just to add to this, as she's coming to the podium, the outstanding year that we've had financially wouldn't be made possible without a lot of people working really, really hard. So I think that's reflected in the, obviously in the financial numbers, but it reflects a lot of work of human resources. So just special thanks to Jenna and the whole team for the work that they've done during this past year.
Thank you. And I say thank you for them as well, because everyone is certainly working really hard. Okay, so our FY21 employee staffing level update is, well, it's a little bit more than it has been in previous years. So based on our average monthly employee roster of 273 full and part-time employees, 141 left employment, so 52%. With 21% more than last fiscal year. So we definitely have seen an increase of folks leaving employment. I don't think that's a unique issue to Jekyll Island. I think as most business owners can attest, that there's a lot of people leaving the workforce for a variety of reasons. So 116 of those folks left voluntarily, while 25 left involuntarily. Now this does not include seasonal or temporary employees, right? We expect them to be leaving. Okay, so you can kind of see the breakdown in a picture here. So of the 141 employees that left voluntarily, 43 were full-time, while 73 were part-time. This is not unusual. We do see more part-time folks leaving versus full-time. And then of the 24 folks that left involuntarily, 12 were full-time and 13 were part-time. So breaking that down by the reasons that folks are leaving, 32% left for opportunity, which is typically the highest percent of why people are leaving is for opportunity reasons. This includes higher paying jobs, leaving for full-time jobs if they're currently working part-time, and leaving for their field of study, right? So we do have a college here, we do have college students, and then they'll leave because they've obtained employment in their field of study. Now 30% left for personal reasons, so this is personal health, illness within a family, some didn't care for the work once they got into the job, and a couple left because they didn't care for their supervisor or their coworkers. Now about half of those, of that 30% that left actually did leave for COVID-related reasons. So whether that be for themselves or for a family member, they stated that COVID was the reason that they were leaving. Okay, 10% relocated outside of the commuting area, 23% left for schedule availability, and 2% just abandoned their job. We didn't hear from them again, they just stopped showing up, and then 4% or 3% had retired. So I like to break down these reasons a little bit further by the full-time and the part-time. So as you can see, that opportunity, relocation, abandoning jobs, that's about 50-50 between full-time and part-time. For personal reasons, 62% of those that left were part-time, while 38 were full-time. Availability, that's 100% part-time. That's typical. We do have people who try to piece part-time work together with the jobs that we have here, and it doesn't always work out for their schedules. As you know, our fire department is heavily staffed with part-time folks, and so other departments that they work at also have difficulty with staffing, so it's hard for them to, again, piece their position here with us. And then of course, to retire from the authority, you would be a full-time employee. Okay. And so one thing that I noticed, and I mentioned this, I think to Jones, was that this is the first year that we actually saw a higher percent of full-time people leaving for opportunity than part-time people. It's just a smidge, but it's trending in that direction where we do have more full-time people that have left for higher paying jobs than just part-time folks. Okay, and then I also wanted to share with you this kind of trend from year-to-year comparison. So we started really tracking these numbers back in FY 14, and you can see the pink is the total turnover. It had kind of been rising, and then looking back in some of our records, right around that time of FY 16, FY 17, we had started to make some improvements in pay, and we did see a decrease in response to that of people leaving the authority. Okay, and then it kind of has trended up a little bit in FY 19, back down again in FY 20, and then FY 21 I think is going to be kind of that odd year. But certainly as we go forward and keep looking at the data and talking to folks, we do realize that compensation is an area that we pretty consistently look at. Wherever we can make improvements with that, we do, just to make, I know that Jekyll Island is a great place to work, and most of our employees do, but we do have to consider the expense of traveling to the island, the actual pay that they're getting, not just on top of the benefits, but the actual pay. So we're going to keep plugging away at getting people to, come to work for Jekyll Island, and put our positions in front of as many people as we can, and hopefully cut through some of the chatter and be able to get some more well-qualified folks to come over to the authority. So, do you have any questions?
Are you seeing more applicants come out recently? I've seen it in small business. We didn't have any.
Yeah, so it varies based on the job. Some of the positions where we have really taken a deep dive and said, okay, where are we and compared to other positions that are similar. If we have increased the rate of pay a little bit, or looked at the job description and kind of I wouldn't say reinvent, but kind of remastered it a little bit, we have increased the number of applicants. So certainly nowhere near where any of us have been, but yeah, we are starting to see a slight increase for sure. Okay, so now one of the things that we are starting to do, not that, we haven't, but we really have been challenging ourselves to think out of the box, like what do we do different? How do we get folks to, remember us when they are looking for employment or consider us? And so an opportunity kind of came across our way, I guess it was early this summer, or midsummer, and it was with the Boys and Girls Club. And it's a program that they have been wanting to pilot, and we readily said, let's try this. And it's really giving an opportunity to some teens that maybe aren't certain where they want to go or what direction they want to go in. Do they even want to go to college? You know, what do they want to do? And this pilot program allows them to come over and shadow and get a little bit of experience in some positions that are of interest to them, right? So some positions don't require them to go to college and other ones do. And so we thought it was a great opportunity for us to kind of sow into some potential future employees, and it's a great opportunity for them. So one of the departments that we did this with was marketing, and so I'd like Alexa to come and talk to you a little bit more about that and her experience with the program.
That's okay, thank you. Thank you, Jenna. So yes, she just touched on kind of what we've been spending the last 6 weeks doing, and we were very excited to welcome 2 students, 11th grade students with us in the marketing department out of Brunswick High School and Glen Academy. And then our landscaping department actually also had an intern as well that assisted them. And so this summer, it was about 6 weeks of exposure essentially to career environments working alongside our teams. It was, you know, certainly an opportunity for our team to kind of learn and see what these kids coming out of high school are interested in. And there were a lot of opportunities, I think, for us to really help guide them, and we learned some things from them as well. Our landscaping intern had actually assisted with some landscape restoration projects, including the installation of several commemorative benches around the island. I obviously didn't oversee the landscaping intern, but I wanted to make sure to mention that here because we did have other departments as well that participated in this. Our marketing interns, they actually assisted with social media development. They worked with our convention center sales team to put together some group experience, team building exercises. They assisted in brand photo shoots. You can see some of those photos here and a lot of other opportunities. When they first came on board, we sat down and talked with them about some of their interests, and then we used that to guide the direction of the next several weeks. They had a lot of interest in social media. They had interest in graphic design. So what we did is we worked with them on sort of a capstone project, and we asked them to work towards developing something that they could walk away with. So one of our interns, she worked on her version of a shrimp and grits poster. And then our other intern worked on developing a social media content calendar. So it was a great opportunity for them to really be exposed to what you might do in marketing. Certainly some days it's just meetings, but other days they get to go outside and take pictures. So we were very excited to have them join us. As Jenna mentioned, this was a pilot program, so we've had discussions about opportunities to certainly enhance the program as it goes forward. The Boys and Girls Club assisted with transportation to bring these students over every day. But we were really grateful to have them. We were sad to lose them at the end of the sort of semester, I guess, if you could say, the 6 weeks that they were here. We actually had them put together little presentations to outline what they learned. And my Sean Collins, who was one of our marketing interns, at the end of his presentation, he shared this quote, and I felt like it was worth noting here. So he said, "During my internship, I got to learn what each person in the marketing department did and how their jobs intertwined with each other. I also got to meet different people around the JIA who could be valuable references later on in my life. I really appreciate all the time and effort each person took into making my internship a fun learning experience." And this is actually a fun little photo that my Sean took in front of our mural in the historic district. So I just wanted to share that quickly and give you all an update. So we're very excited to see what the future of this program can hold. So any questions?
Thank you. It just shows, once again, the street runs both ways. And it's very important that we take advantage of that. Dr. Evans, have anything else?
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the report from the Human Resources Department.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Open the floor for any public comment. And of course, we welcome it. We have the parameters. Any public comment? Okay. The next, I'm going to move to the marketing committee, and Joy Birch Meeks will open the marketing committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to have you back.
Thank you.
Alexa, she will come back up front, and she has for us today sort of a recap for fiscal year 21 on all of our media advertising. At this time, I'll turn it over to Alexa.
Thank you, Joy. Yes, so I wanted to quickly update you all kind of on the last fiscal year and some of the highlights that we've been working on. I think that speaks a little bit to those numbers that Bill talked about earlier, and even Jones, in terms of our traffic and visitation. So looking at the last fiscal year, particularly April through June, we reached more than 2 billion potential visitors with our kind of PR outreach news placements. But for the year as a whole, we had around 1,000 media placements in FY21, which is, I would say, up about 50% over the previous year. Certainly, we did pull back on advertising to some extent with the start of the pandemic, and had a more targeted approach. So looking at things like pitching stories around destinations worth the drive, remote work, road trips, certainly RV, camping, those things were very popular. But even things down to unique museum exhibits, wedding venues, things that would get people interested in coming to Jekyll for a more unique experience. And so one of the opportunities we also took on were hosting some FAM trips, or familiarization trips, with media journalists. So in 21, we hosted 4 different FAMs, and we were looking at reaching kind of markets that we've seen peaks in traveler interest, but haven't necessarily done a more targeted approach there. So one of those markets was Charlotte, and we hosted a journalist back in February with Charlotte Magazine, had him come and experience the island. I think he came actually at a wonderful time in terms of weather. And that certainly turned into a story in Charlotte Magazine called Travel Retreat to Historic Jekyll Island, and it was published in the June issue of Charlotte Magazine. You can see the cover there where it had a nice little call out for that story. So we were excited for that media placement, but we actually just recently learned that the editor of Orlando Magazine enjoyed that story so much that they have also picked up his feature in Orlando Magazine, which will now be running in this month's edition. So it's nice that, you know, certainly we kind of got a 2-for-1 there. But again, that's something that we've been continuing to do. We actually just hosted a journalist this past weekend. So we're continuing those fan trips, and I think what we're learning with those is it allows us to really target the message rather than just traditional advertising. So we're continuing those PR efforts for sure. Separate of that, our digital media efforts have obviously continued to grow as well. I think, you know, in addition to our traffic and visitation on the island, we're seeing that growth on our digital platforms as well. Our website performance has continued to increase year over year. We've had about 4.8 million visits to our website in FY21. Some of our efforts are certainly pulling back on single-use printed materials and getting more people to go to our website. So we're starting to see that traffic increase as well. We also reintroduced some SEO, some targeted SEO with a small budget, but we were able to increase our click-through rate and our average cost per click of 40 cents, which is lower than industry standards. So we're excited that that obviously is continuing to perform well for us. We redesigned our e-newsletter. Hopefully you're all subscribed and received that. But we did roll out a refreshed look and feel about 6 months ago, and that has certainly been performing well for us as well. We've seen an increase in open rate, as well as the number of e-blasts that we're sending out. So we had about a 70% increase in messages going out this last year than we have done previously. So all things that we're kind of growing and expanding on. We also introduced or reintroduced, I should say, a co-op program, a targeted co-op program We had not done a co-op program in probably about 4 or 5 years, since before I was here, and we reintroduced that with all of our lodging partners, so our hoteliers, our rental agencies, and our campground as well, to target and include that messaging to get people to come and want to stay overnight. So really looking to reach those overnight visitors. And so we've seen nearly 10,000 clicks through those specific targeted co-op ads to our partner sites. So we know that they're obviously gleaning benefit from our newsletters as well. And lastly, social media. That's always been really a top performer for us and continues to do so. So really nothing new here. But of course our followers continue to increase on both Facebook and Instagram. But Instagram did see a big boost last year. We accumulated more than 3 million impressions with our posts, which was a 38% increase in engagements, and then our followers increased around 22%. We've had a lot of really top performing content on Instagram, which is driving our followers as well. Here pictured are certainly 2 top performing posts, and I think it's no surprise that Driftwood Beach certainly sparks that engagement. So I think that kind of just speaks to the work that we're doing both in print and digital and PR, and we're continuing those efforts. And as we move into this next fiscal year, we're working again on more targeted advertising and reaching some of those regional markets that we've seen interest in, continuing to target road trippers. That's not going away, I think, anytime soon. So all positive efforts. So any questions? I'll turn it back to you, Joy.
Thank you, Alexa. I think, Mr. Chairman, we continue to commend the entire team and certainly the marketing department as they drive the interest in folks coming to the island, and that concludes our report.
Oh, thank you so much, and I wholeheartedly agree. The next is we were going to move to the Committee of the Whole.
Public comments.
Public comments, thank you. Any public comments? Chair does not hear any. So we will move to the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Tollison, maybe Legislative Committee, Mr.
Does Triff have a report?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for asking. I'm glad you're back.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm showing next we go to the dispatch service agreement. Dennis. Dennis, if you will please brief us on this.
Yes, sir. Good morning, board members. I'm grateful to be before you this morning. On behalf of the Jekyll Island Fire Department, I am seeking board consideration to enter into an agreement with the Joint Public Safety Communications Department for dispatching services for us. And if to go back a little bit, in March, I came before you and asked for a resolution to move the 911 lines from the Georgia State Patrol Center to Glen Brunswick. As a part of, this is a part of that project, extending it forward. We now have the 911 lines being answered all at Glen Brunswick, and this piece of it is now at Glen Brunswick for them to transmit and dispatch us from that same location. So as it sits right now, they're getting the calls at Glen Brunswick, but therefore having to call over at the State Patrol to dispatch us. So this is just a continuation of the project that we've been working on to improve public safety on Jekyll Island. We've had a lot of support from this, from Glenn County, the City of Brunswick, and of course, Mr. Hooks and our leadership. So I've been in consultation with Melissa in our legal department and Marjorie in our finance department, and we are prepared in that aspect, and the agreement has been vetted through our legal department. It has already passed the City Commission in Brunswick, and it has already passed at the Glenn County Board of Commissioners, which is a part of that agreement, signing off on it. And if this is approved by you today, then the dispatch services would begin on September the 1st, and that would near the end of this project in bringing a more expeditious caller to response of the Jekyll Island Fire and EMS Department on Jekyll Island. So we've been looking forward to this day, and it's been a long journey, but I think we're getting close. So I'll take any questions you may have.
And Dennis, you should mention this does have the support of the Georgia State Patrol, correct?
Absolutely. They've been lockstep with us every step of the way. They've been very supportive. They realize that the technologies have changed and the need to do that. So they've been a great partner, and they will still be answering their calls with us as they have normally done. So nothing is changing for them. So they have been along with us all the way. So thank you for that point, Mr. Hooks.
Great, thanks.
So the staff recommends approval of the agreement as presented after your consideration.
Oh. Any other comments? Okay, so I think we move now to a motion to recommend approval of the dispatch service agreement as recommended by staff. I need a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, like sign? The motion carries.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. The looking next, I'm showing request of approval of the campground bathhouse proposal. Noel, well, you're going to present instead of Noel.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, Noel is ill today and unable to be with us, but I will present this for your consideration. As board members know, the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission, GSFIC, approved a grant award of $999,480 to the JIA for construction of new bathhouses in the campground. In addition, we were fortunate enough to receive bonding funding of $2.95 million for campground expansion from the state legislature. As a result of the prototype design by Usry Rule Architects for the bathhouses, we were required to get 3 competitive bids by the state. The 3 bidders were Woodman Builders, Inc., Wildsmith Construction, and Overholt Construction. The apparent low bidder, Woodman Builders, Inc., was approved by GSFIC to proceed to contract. We, unfortunately, we had hoped we would be able to build 4 bathhouses out of the $999,000, but with the price of construction, even going back and doing value engineering, we cannot make that happen, it seems. So we'll have to utilize some of the other funds for the 4th bathhouse eventually. But at this time, we're requesting funds in the amount of $1.2432624 for the construction of 3 prototype bathhouses in the campground. 1 bathhouse will be constructed in the existing campground, while 2 will be constructed in the expansion area. So this is the first part of the campground overall expansion. The request for awarding the construction contract would be for a new ADA compliant bathhouse at the campground, and the contract would be awarded to Woodman Builders, Inc. in the amount of $1,243,026.24.
We will need a motion. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the campground bathhouse proposal as proposed by staff?
So
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Okay. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Thank you. Then the next, I'm showing that Lee Askew Elkins is going to be speaking. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure to have Lee with us today for one of your board meetings. Lee has spoken with, I think, most of you individually. She's also been engaging with the public through various committees and also then through a major survey regarding the future of Jekyll Island, and she is here today to present that in behalf of her team. Lee?
Thank you so much. Can y'all hear me okay? I'm not great with a microphone. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to kind of give you an update on the planning process as it stands right now, as well as give you some of the specifics of the survey that we conducted for about a month this summer. As part of the master plan update, we agreed to do a public survey using Qualtrics. We were going to have about 20 questions. Most of those would be on the Likert scale, so that we'd be able to analyze them very quickly. So those are questions that you agree, somewhat agree, disagree, strongly disagree, was the scale we were looking at. Then we provided one question with open comments. So the categories and the questions were initially developed with JIA staff and UGA, and then we had our survey research unit at the Carl Vinson Institute review the questions to ensure they met the best research practice standards, and then JIA approved the survey for us to then roll out. The survey was organized under 6 major categories: visitation, conservation and land use, capacity and infrastructure, economic sustainability, activities and amenities, and then a little bit about who was responding to the survey. And these categories essentially mirror the categories in the 2014 master plan. The headings are just a little different, but in this plan update, we will be using the same categories from the 2014 plan. So what did we find out? We had 11,497 people take the survey. This was truly remarkable. They were not all fully completed, but even our survey research unit is like, how did we get this many people to respond? And so I will say Alexa and her folks who pushed it out on social media, we provided some signage and postcards with a QR code that were posted around the island, but it was really a team effort to get this out and to get as many people to respond as possible. You can see that the top 10 locations for response, not surprisingly, Brunswick and Jekyll Island had the most responses, St. Simons, and then Atlanta, Jacksonville, Savannah, Marietta, Macon, Cumming, Athens, and Decatur. So that's where the highest numbers of responses came from, and you can see that mapped next to that. And then where did the other responses come from? Well, we had responses from 48 states. Only Hawaii and North Dakota had no respondents, but because there was one response from a fleet post office in the Pacific, it could have come from Hawaii. We had one response from an Army post office in Allied Europe, and we have five responses from Canada. So you can see again here the mapped legend, the zip codes. Zip code was one thing that folks were asked to put in so that we could see where we were getting respondents from. And you can see the heavy response rate from the southeast, but really east of the Mississippi, there were just a lot of respondents, and then scattered around further out west. So one of the first things that we asked folks were, who were they? How were they responding? 64% of the respondents were previous visitors. Then we had current visitors was our next highest number, and then full-time residents and part-time residents were at 4% and 5%. 7% of respondents had never been to Jekyll. I'm not sure why you would respond to a survey about somewhere you had never been, but what I'm hopeful is that those folks answered that question and then dropped out. So that would be some of those responses that were incomplete. As we're walking through these responses, what I want you to pay particular attention to are the areas that are green and gray. The green color is strongly agree, and the gray color is agree. And you'll notice as we go throughout all of these responses, we had strong agreement and agreement on just about everything. Our first section was on visitation. Jekyll is for sure a welcoming destination. People feel good when they're here, they feel welcome when they are here. Folks also feel safe as a pedestrian, whether they're walking or jogging or biking. You can see there's a very strong response that they agree that they feel safe. Again, on visitation, folks feel that Jekyll is accessible for folks of all different abilities. They feel like they have enough space on the beaches when you're out and about, you don't feel crowded, and that overall, folks really strongly feel that Jekyll is well maintained. And that's at 96% of folks feel that. Switching to conservation and land use, we got into a little more detail with some of these questions looking at management of landscapes. So the first, tree protection, reforestation, and forest management, including through controlled burning, are important for the future of Jekyll Island. And I think folks really understand that because of what Jekyll Island is and how much of the area is preserved, it is important to have that maintenance of forested areas, and those management techniques are important. Folks also understand that it's important to help protect threatened or rare wildlife or plants, that sometimes you have to remove invasive species, or whether they're wildlife or plants, to protect those that are rare or threatened. Staying with conservation and land use, folks feel like Jekyll does a good job with recycling. And then this was the one question, it's a little larger on the screen. The Georgia Sea Turtle Center should be expanded to accommodate increased numbers of visitors. We had more folks disagree on this one. And I think that if we had rephrased the question to say to accommodate an increased number of turtles, we would have had greater agreement on that. But it's still, folks very strongly agree that the Georgia Sea Turtle Center should be expanded. Capacity and infrastructure, sufficient public facilities, the showers, restrooms, picnic areas, and parking. Folks feel good about that. There's good signage to navigate around the island. And really, I think that beyond the conserved lands on Jekyll, bike paths are the most important thing to people for both recreation and transportation around the island. Almost 68% of people strongly agree that bike paths are an important recreation and transportation option. Turning to economic sustainability, people agree and strongly agree that the parking fee is an appropriate way to fund Jekyll's operations, maintenance, and conservation. That's with 35% strongly agreeing and 56% of folks agreeing. Folks also feel okay about increasing the parking fee for certain events. It again is not, I think anytime you say we're going to increase a fee, folks get a little hesitant on that strongly agree or agree. But there was a majority of folks who felt that that was a good tool to keep in the tool bag. And then Jekyll does well balancing being accessible for people of all abilities, being financially self-sustainable, and being stewards of the island's wildlife, environment, and history. Folks really agree with that the authority itself does a great job. Activities and amenities. Restaurants on Jekyll Island offer a wide variety of food types. People agree with that, but they also think that Jekyll would agree maybe from some more dining options, grab-and-go options, carry-out or delivery. I think this is probably in response to all of a sudden there were a lot of people at Jekyll this summer, this spring, the numbers increased, the restaurants were very crowded, there were long wait times sometimes, and so folks were thinking what might be some other options to feed the family instead of standing in line. But I think that restaurants kind of like a line because you know you have people coming in and dining. More on the activities and amenities, folks feel that they're fairly priced, that they meet the needs of various ages and interests and abilities, and that there's a wide variety of outdoor opportunities on Jekyll. Folks really enjoy visiting the historic district. They think Jekyll has a nice variety of retail options, and that Jekyll should maybe look to introduce events that promote and highlight the historical and environmental uniqueness of the island. So this would be additional programming type events that folks could participate in while they're visiting. And then we asked about the specific events, kind of the big four, and the scale changes slightly here to be not at all important, somewhat important, a little important, and very important. And you see that really folks really enjoy the events. The Holly Jolly Jekyll is kind of the most that folks call very important, and thinking about this, I think that folks may enjoy that it's kind of spread out a little bit, and so you may not have a one-day big event, but you have times that folks can come in and out and enjoy things over several weeks. And then we asked, what is your highest priority for Jekyll Island? And so 39% of folks said environmental and wildlife conservation, 31% said recreation, 19% said historic preservation, and then 11% of folks said other. And so we dug into that other a little bit because they were given the opportunity to write in and to give us a written response. And we had about 900 written responses for our other. And the highest priority for them was all three. So if you combined the environmental, the recreation, and the historic preservation, 44% of that 11% that said other said all three of them were equally important. Folks also noted things like that it was quiet, that it was affordable, that they loved the beach, that it was family-oriented, percentage loved camping. The 14% of development is that folks like the small amount of development, that it's not overdeveloped. And then 6% of folks said golf. In the other category, some folks called out very specific things, like they liked the glass orbs, they liked the hunt for those, or they liked particular things about an event. And so the 21% of folks who said other, they were very specific on different things. And as part of the master plan update, all of the written comments will be included in the appendix. So in the survey, as I said, we provided an opportunity for folks to provide an open-ended response. What else should we know? Well, we got 5,554 comments on what else we should know. And this notebook in 8-point font contains 161 pages of those other comments that we spent a good chunk of time sorting through and categorizing them to figure out what people were saying in those comments. So we kind of built 4 categories. So the first, we felt like across all types of respondents, whether they were a resident, a current visitor, a previous visitor, or a part-time resident, we knew where the comments came from based on how they identified themselves. Where we stay, don't overdevelop, update the campground, need more restaurants, and ensure affordability. So there's a little bit of conflict there in saying don't overdevelop, but people also desire more restaurants and places to dine in variety of dining options. Where we shop and play, revitalizing the amphitheater was something we heard a lot of. Adding pickleball courts was something else that a lot of folks mentioned. We don't like and we like the golf plan. There was a mix on that, on what folks thought should be doing with that. The great bike trails and paths, and then also continuing to improve those trails and paths for usage. How we work, a lot of praise for the authority. Folks really noted, hundreds and hundreds of people noted their great work. And then they also said things like make sure the speed limit's enforced, and enforce leash laws and pet waste pickup were things that were heard over and over again. I think that one thing with enforcing the speed limit is because there's so much pedestrian movement on the island, so many people bike or walk on the trails, traffic feels fast when you're on those trails, whether it is or not. And then the entrance gate, there remains some confusion about parking passes, how to get those, how exactly that system works. And so that's an area that maybe more education or examples need to be done. And then we heard from lots of folks across all the categories, a dedicated lane for pass holders is desired at all times. And while sometimes that may not be possible, given the volume of people coming onto the island, it is something that's desired. So we also did a town hall meeting as part of our public input process, and we did this town hall meeting kind of in the middle of the survey timeline. We used an electronic town hall format, which means we were set up, we had big round tables, every table had a laptop on it. As folks were seated, somebody was either the volunteer or the victim of having to type responses into the laptop. We had about 70 folks who participated in that. And we asked the same questions that I asked you all when I interviewed you. What are the greatest accomplishments? What's been most significant to you? Over the next 5 years, what do you see as the greatest issues or challenges? And what are the greatest opportunities, as well as what else we need to know? So from this, the significant accomplishments, the convention center and the beach village, the conservation plan, Great Dunes Park, and bike path improvements were what we heard most often. Issues and challenges, folks are concerned about overdevelopment, they're concerned about capacity and infrastructure, and then traffic and the toll booth. For opportunities, folks are, again, with the pickleball courts, there's something they would like to have added, opportunities to develop new restaurants, and then a pharmacy or urgent care type outlet. And then what else do we need to know? That communication and community are important. And in kind of following up with some folks on that, I think that the maybe some of the ways that the community gathered have changed with the pandemic. And so hopefully that may return with opportunities for town halls with the authority and volunteer opportunities as things get back to normal at some point. So what are our next steps? Well, we're right now finishing up gathering together the data and information that'll help inform decision making. We're reviewing and have been reviewing all the input from the stakeholders. We have a stakeholder committee that we've heard from the staff, from the board, and then the survey in the town hall. It all will influence what what's going to be in the plan. We've spent a lot of time reviewing the plans and studies that were either recommended by the master plan in 2014 or that have been done since then. And then we're using all of that information to inform the findings and recommendations for the master plan update. And I think the other piece that's important to remember is this truly is an update. I know in 2014, the master plan had a multi-year long process to develop it. And this is a fairly rapid timeline on this, but it truly is an update and looking to kind of fill some gaps and add some other things in that hopefully will move the authority for the next 5 years in a planning cycle. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're going to defer Noel's report.
Yes, sir. That report will be given at the September board meeting.
Okay, yeah. So forth. And then the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move through some items pretty quickly, or try to. There's an upcoming code revision public input session on August 24th at 5:30. It will be upstairs at the golf course in the building there where Trebuzio's Grill is. That will be an update, an overall on the overall work that the consulting team is doing at this point. They'll be talking about the specifics of their work thus far, but they'll also be open to hearing from any residents or anyone who is interested in any specific issues that that the individual would like for the consulting team to review. So that's an important additional meeting, and these meetings will continue until the project is finished. There is a slide that I have for you this morning. I included in your blue folders today a survey that is Longwoods International, which is a consulting firm that looks at visitation and tourist issues and does surveys throughout the world, but this particular survey is looking at within the United States. I included one slide for the slides, but then more of the survey for you, and that is that the coronavirus is beginning to impact decisions that are being made now over the next 6 months. Of those surveyed, I think there were over 1,000 folks surveyed, 34% indicated that their travel plans would be impacted, they felt, at this point by the Delta variant that has now been presented, and the situation within various states. Other slides indicated that that various persons felt that the coronavirus would greatly impact their decision to travel over the next 6 months. And then there was a slide that I felt like was appropriate and maybe has some answers as far as why our budget fared so well this past year. And that is, if looking at the influences, or when looking at the influences of COVID-19 on travel plans in the next 6 months, and then I just took and extrapolated that and said, well, I think the same thing was occurring the last 6 months. So that's according to Jones Hooks, not according to Longwood International. But the first item was, I'm choosing destinations I can drive to as opposed to fly to. Mm-hmm. And so we know that has been our example over the past year. And then another one, I am traveling within the United States instead of internationally. Well, we definitely think that philosophy has impacted our numbers over the past year. We think also the absence of cruise ships has impacted our numbers. And then another one, I am choosing rural destinations over city destinations. So looking to be out and looking at everything Jekyll Island has to offer is a more positive experience and ranking higher than within a metropolitan area. So I just thought that to bring that survey forward to you today, because we are seeing some changes. Obviously, it's now August and schools are back in session, and we always anticipate a downturn in August. But we also know that in discussion with Allison Jackson from the Convention Center and with our sales department with Kevin Udell, that we are having groups that are calling and asking questions about our protocols and just making inquiries. So we have not had widespread cancellations like we had last year thus far, but I do think that we still are being cautious and concerned. If you'll remember our Ranger program, Ray Emerson presented to you just a few meetings ago the new design for signage throughout Jekyll Island, and especially looking at our beach areas. And I had asked Ray just the other day, I said, so have you seen any evidence that the signs have been helping? And it's amazing to me that the preliminary numbers that he had as of about a week or so ago was 35% reduction in violations since the installation of those signs. I think that's pretty incredible. So it seems like that people are viewing the signs and that they're educating our guests as they were intended to do. He'll be able to give us a full report after Labor Day, but I just thought the preliminary numbers were worthy of your interest. We also are pleased to announce that the Georgia Department of Community Affairs has awarded the AmeriCorps grants for again this year, and the Jekyll Islands program continues to rank very high within that overall program. As a matter of fact, Jekyll Island through the Turtle Center will receive $358,433 through this program, and that is the third highest award within the state of Georgia. And I think that is usually about where we are. The university system is usually a little higher, and in this case, Hands on Atlanta was the highest award this year. But I think it's a tribute and a compliment to our team and the great work that they do. So I wanted to bring that forward to you today, Mr. Chairman. We also have a couple of other items that are in your folder today. There's a complete report from the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, the Environmental Protection Division, of a review that the Environmental Protection Division did on our sanitary sewer system, and while the complete review is in your packet, I thought the bottom line was definitely worthy of bringing forward, and that finding is this: during the inspection, no deficiencies were noted, but recommendations are presented in the enclosed report. Based upon the operation history since the last sanitary survey, this system has been designated as an outstanding performer. And I think that is just, here again, a compliment to our staff and the dedication and commitment that they exhibit. And I also want to thank you for the continued support, as you did today during the Finance Committee, of approving new equipment and replacing equipment, so that we're always trying to make certain that that all of our water and sewer operations are top notch. We also received, in the similar vein, the fourth quarter report from the Office of Fleet Management, their tier report. And for the fourth quarter of this year, I think we're beginning to just expect this, but Tier 1 performing fleets in the state of Georgia, there are only 4 agencies in Tier 1, and the Jekyll Island Authority is a Tier 1 again. And to me, I think that's here again an example of vehicle maintenance doing a great job, and keeping, making certain we are on schedule and having the right schedules so that all of our equipment is maintained as it should be. And one other item I want to bring forward, because to me this just shows it's across all the operations, and that is that within our Historic Resources department, that we were informed by the state agency records manager that the Jekyll Island Authority is one of the only state agencies in Georgia with a fully revised and updated retention schedule. So to me, I think, wow, that's just one more example of us doing what we should be doing and doing it right. And I just want to share that with you today. Also in your packets today, there's some of the latest information from our golf course. And we had this information, actually Anna had prepared this before we, for your packets, before we received the comment from Mr. Smith today regarding the golf course master plan. I want to reiterate to you where we are with that master plan. And that is, the golf master plan, as you know, you have not adopted that plan yet, because we've been spending time very methodically going through various reviews and having on-site visits by board members out to the golf course, as well as now engaged in an archaeological study to make sure there are no significant findings that would adversely impact any of the plans that are being discussed. We also have continued to bring information forward to you for your review, which is what this information is today. This is showing a comparison of FY 20 and 21 golf rounds, paid golf rounds on Jekyll Island, as well as revenues on Jekyll Island from the golf courses. It also shows you the number of members versus paid rounds. To me, this data is in line with what I was talking with you about a few minutes ago, in that we definitely have seen an increase in golf rounds as a result of the pandemic. And this ties right in with the National Golf Foundation's findings that I've also been sharing with you recently, that indeed golf rounds played throughout the United States have increased during the pandemic. Now, whether or not that will continue, we don't know. But at the same time, we'll continue to bring all of this data forward for your review. And that's one of the important items within the Golf Master Plan, is that it is a phased plan so that you can make decisions based on play. And that is something that needs to be remembered and recalled and also exclaimed whenever erroneous information is distributed concerning how the Golf Master Plan will proceed. And so I think that's very important. It's also important that correct information be put out. You will remember that the Bleakley study is nothing more than an analysis of various ways to pay for development of the Golf Master Plan. There were different scenarios presented in that study. That study has not been adopted. There's not one recommendation there that you've zeroed in on and said, this is what we want to do. As a matter of fact, I've heard the majority of you say on site visits on the golf course that the one thing you don't want to see is you don't want to see additional housing units built on the golf course. I've heard the majority of you say that whenever we've been out on tours. So I think it's important for people to understand that's your position and not have erroneous information fed. And so we're going to continue to speak up against erroneous information. And Spencer Brookman has just distributed yesterday to the Men's Golf Association an update that will counter some of the false information that is being distributed, and we'll continue to have good dialogue with the board on various components that you need to be aware of as you make decisions moving forward with the Golf Master Plan. Let me stop right there and see if anyone has any questions or comments about that, because obviously that is an important item as far as the future. If not, Mr. Chairman, let me bring up one other item that I know our Vice Chairman has expressed concern about, because he stayed at the new Marriott property just recently, and cell service was horrific on the south end of the island. Unfortunately, it is continuing to be much less than it should be. We have engaged in extensive communications with Verizon and their subcontractors regarding the cell service. It is tied to the improvements that we're making at the south water tower. Unfortunately, just calling out the company as the truth is, Verizon did not move forward on the schedule that we had asked them to, and so everything is now off schedule as a result of that project. And Noel has been writing that constantly. He's had some very good conversations with some South End residents who had expressed concern, thinking it was the JIA's fault. And indeed, this is not the JIA's fault, but we have been certainly criticized for it. So we're doing everything we can. We're also trying to make certain that the correct number is now given so that folks who are experiencing difficulties can contact Verizon directly to express their concerns. The solution, the interim solution, is for the Verizon cow that they're using at the south end, for that antenna to be raised. Unfortunately, there are some issues associated with the airport, and not that it's going to prevent them from extending the height of that tower, but it's just a process that they have to go through. And so we are working with them. Noel, of course, is our airport manager and has already been in touch with several folks about that. And so we're hoping that even though the full and complete resolution will still be several weeks in coming, that an interim improvement will occur very soon. And I wanted to make certain we brought that forward.
Thank you.
One other item, Mr. Chairman, that I have this morning is we had originally not scheduled a JIA board meeting for the month of November based on the anticipated master plan update and some other projects that consultants are working on for you at this point. We feel that there will be a need for a November meeting. It would fall on November the 16th, which would be early in November. Thanksgiving is not until the Thursday of the week following, so it shouldn't interfere with plans there. But I wanted to bring that forward and see if there were objections to us adding that to the calendar.
And we'll still be able to do it electronically and.
There would still be an electronic option, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
But we feel like we would need, rather than what we had was a combined November-December meeting on December the 14th.
Right.
We would like to have a November meeting on November the 16th and reserve still Tuesday, December the 14th, in case. But obviously, if we were to be able not to have that meeting, then we would certainly, that would be the chair's call. But at this point, we are anticipating a need for both of those meetings.
And given all the circumstances and everything that's taken place this year, I think we need to do that. It's our job. And I really and truly think we should do that. If anyone disagrees, that's fine. And I'll definitely listen. But I think we need to plan on the meetings.
Well, without objection, we'll go ahead and add that to the calendar, Mr. Chairman. We'll send out a notice to all board members as well as post it on the authority website, and we'll plan accordingly.
I mean,
Thank you.
We've got an obligation, and we need to fulfill it. So, good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
All right. On Chairman's comments, I'll be very brief. I, again, am very appreciative to all of you who have been so supportive and helpful to me and my family the last few months, and it shows what a great family we have with this authority. Excuse me. And again, I'm just, I sit here and listen to these reports, and I'm just so proud of the staff. I mean, it's just nothing short of remarkable in what they've done. We're going to open the floor to public comments and limit to 3 minutes for each person. Do I have any? I do not hear. And do we need a 5-minute break?
If we could move on, since we have people on the phone.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's just move on. And then I'm going to move and open the August 17th, 2021 board meeting of the Jekyll Island Authority. We will now call the roll. Anna?
Yes, sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Here.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams. Commissioner Mark Williams, are you on the line? Not currently present. Miss Joy Birch Meeks.
Here.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
He had a funeral to attend. He was going to have to leave after the committee
Right.
meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tripp Tallison is not currently present. Dr. Buster Evans.
Here.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you so much. And so we're going to go a little out of order here and announce the committee appointments after today's action items. I need a motion and a second on the minutes of the July 20th, 2021 board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of the July 2021 board meeting signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Carries. And next is a ratification of board actions taken in fiscal year 2021. We need a motion and a second. Is there a motion to ratify, affirm, and adopt the previous actions and approvals, appointments, or other actions taken by this board of directors as a whole that are within the board's authority from July 1st, 2020 to June 30, 2021?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Okay, I now will open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Please state your name and your nomination for vice chair. And I had asked Bob Kruger to remain and serve another year as vice chairman. So I need a nomination.
Mr. Chairman, this is Buster Evans. I would nominate Bob Kruger to serve again as our vice chairman.
Great, thank you. Any further nominations? Chair hears no other nominations for vice chair. The chair declares nominations closed. There being only one nominee, the chair declares Bob Kruger elected to be vice chairman. And I will now move to the open the floor for nominations for treasurer secretary. And again, I will open the floor for nominations. And I asked Bill Gross if he would serve one more year, and he agreed. So I need a nomination.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bob Kruger. I nominate Bill Gross as to the office of treasurer secretary.
Great, thank you. Any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations for treasurer secretary, the chair declares nominations closed. There being only one nominee, the chair declares Bill Gross elected to be treasurer secretary. Thank you all so very, very much, and I can't thank you enough for being so helpful to me. And the board members have received a finance committee recommendation to approve the proposed additional capital request. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? No motion or second needed. Any discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. All right, board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve the proposed dispatch service agreement. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? We don't need a motion or a second. Is there a discussion? Any discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The request for approval of campground bathhouse proposal. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve the campground bathhouse proposal. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? No motion or second is needed. Any discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign, motion carries. And then we're going to open the floor for public comment. Again, the 3 minutes for each person. And I'm going to move now to, do we need a vote on that? Nope. So, okay, the committee appointments, do we have those right here, Anna?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why don't you repeat them for me?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Historic Preservation and Conservation Committee, the chair will be Mr. Dale Atkins, and the members include Joe Wilkinson, Bob Kruger, Mark Williams, Joy Birch Meeks, and Buster Evans. For the Finance Committee, the chair will be Mr. Bill Gross, and the members will be Joe Wilkinson, Bob Kruger, Mark Williams, Tripp Tollison, Buster Evans, Glenn Willard, Joy Birch Meeks, and Dale Atkins.
I've expanded that, just so the record will show. I think we need it.
Yes, sir. For the Human Resources Committee, the chair will be Dr. Buster Evans, and the members include Joe Wilkinson, Bob Kruger, Joy Birch Meeks, and Dale Atkins. For the Marketing Committee, Ms. Joy Birch Meeks will be the chair, and the members include Joe Wilkinson, Bill Gross, Tripp Tollison, Buster Evans, Glenn Willard, and Bob Kruger. For the Legislative Committee, Mr. Tripp Tollison will be the chair, and the members include Joe Wilkinson, Bob Kruger, Bill Gross, Mark Williams, Joy Birch Meeks, and Dale Atkins. For the Committee of the Whole, the chair will be Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr., and the members include Bob Kruger, Bill Gross, Mark Williams, Joy Birch Meeks, Tripp Tollison, Buster Evans, Glenn Willard, and Dale Atkins.
Great, thank you. Do we need any additional action at this point? I don't see that we do.
No, sir, those are your appointments.
Yep, that's the chair's appointments. Okay, the next is a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that this meeting adjourn. Any discussion? And does the chair hear any objection to adjourning? Chair does not, and we are adjourned. And I'm showing 11:12 p.m. Tuesday, August 17th. That's what we're going to show. All right, thank you all very, very much. Now, is this tour still on?
Yes, sir.
Who do you want to announce it?
It's for board members. Are you going to be able to do that, Chuck?
I'll do it. All right. Following the meeting, board members are invited to participate in a 45-minute tour of the Hollyborn Cottage.